Hey everybody, my name's Rachel, and on my channel I talk about reading and writing. Today I want to talk about how to understand old classics. And so there's a lot of videos out there that I think are really good that talk about, if you're new to classics, what do you start with, which classics are like most accessible, but I haven't really seen a lot of videos about the root issue as to why people are looking for accessible classics and why classics can be very intimidating. And it's because the language is older and that makes it harder to understand. And so what I want to talk about today is like why that is and how to navigate that with actual real tips on how to understand older literature. Obviously, you can hear my accent. You can hear the language I'm speaking. I speak English. I only read in English. My Spanish is not that great. So of course, this is only going to be about my experiences reading English. I have no experience what older Spanish is like or any other language for that matter. And I'm not going to be talking about anything before modern English. So nothing before Shakespeare. So about 15-ish hundreds to now. That's the type of literature I'm talking about. Old English is like a new language, or it's old. Old English is like a whole different language. Middle English has different words and rules and things like that. So we're not getting into that can of worms, okay? That's not my area of expertise. And I just figured this would be a good video for me to make because I talk about this for a living. I teach people how to understand older literature regularly. The tips that I provide in this video are going to be very concrete reading skills. So if you don't want to learn about that, this is not the video for you. If you're like, ooh, yes, teach me how to understand old things. You're here. Maybe it's because you're young and you just haven't read that many old things yet. Or maybe you're a well-seasoned reader and you just get really irritated and impatient with older texts. And this won't solve 100% of your problems because some older texts are better written than others. Some of them are just very passive. And some of them you might just find boring. So it's not going to fix everything. It's not going to make every single thing that you read more readable. But it's going to help a lot with at least being able to understand what's going on if you find that you get lost in older literature. Okay, so there are three main reasons why older literature is difficult. Reason number one. Word choices. A lot of times in older literature, different words were used more commonly than now. And some of those words are big and we don't use them that much. So you see them and you're like, what? The next thing, number two, is syntax. That has to do with the way that people structured sentences a long time ago. So even if you know the word, sometimes they throw you off by putting the words in a slightly different order than feels normal or natural today. Number three is wordiness. And a lot of you already know this, but if you crack open an old classic novel, they are using more words to say simple things compared to what we would use now. And think about it. Their lives back then weren't so busy. They weren't side hustling all the time. If you had the privilege to sit down and write a book or sit down and read a book, you had a lot of time on your hands and it didn't need to be so snappy, right? So they just used more words. And so all three of these characteristics can make it hard to just understand the main ideas of a classic novel. It can feel easy to just get lost. And so here are four big things that you need to be on the lookout for when you are reading, especially older literature. These are things that you already do when you're reading modern literature. You just don't know it because it probably comes a lot more naturally. And the important thing is I'm listing these things off in order of importance. We need to be looking for these things in this specific order. So important thing number one is you have to look for the action. If you are looking first for action and picking up on what is actually happening, that is going to be your most important thing. What are the characters doing? Are they doing anything? If they're going somewhere, if they're reading something, if they're mailing a letter, just figuring out what those actions are and looking for those action words. That's your first line of defense and being able to pick out the most important things going on because action is generally going to be your most important. Second most important thing are feelings. So what are the characters feeling? Are they using any feeling words at all? So maybe there's not much action going on because we look for that first. And even if there is action, you can also look at the feelings that go with it. But if you're like, okay, there's no action, these people are just sitting around watching this other group of people have a conversation. Well, what is your main character feeling? Maybe that's the point. Maybe she's feeling a lot of jealousy because these characters are talking about how Mr. Rochester is engaged to Miss Ingram. Like, and now your main character, Jane, is feeling really sad about it. Like... So if it's not action, I feel like the second most important thing to look out for are the feelings. And so there's times in older literature, because we're using a lot of words for simple things, you might go through whole passages without much action, and the focus then falls to the feelings. Your next thing, number 3, the most important thing, are the thoughts. Maybe your character is watching that conversation happening. She's not doing anything. She's just sitting there. Maybe she hasn't even really revealed her feelings yet, or we have to read between the lines. Maybe we just need to know what connections she's making. Maybe she's saying, oh, well, I thought that Mr. Rochester didn't like her like that. Or maybe she's thinking something along the lines of, do they even know each other that well? Like... So even if we don't have like feelings, if we just think about what they're thinking about the situation, maybe your character's making a prediction about what's going to happen next, and that's kind of foreshadowing. Maybe they're sharing an opinion about something. It just really depends. So the first thing you look for, to recap, the first thing you look for is action. That's usually the most important stuff. Then that's followed by character feelings. If you don't really have much of either of those, think about what are the characters thinking about. That can foreshadow a lot of things, even including what they're going to do next, and it can foreshadow future feelings and actions. A fourth big thing, and it's very possible that you are reading a passage that has no action, that has no thoughts or feelings, and so instead it's all description. And so maybe you're reading through a whole page, and all you're getting is, wow, that valley has a lot of pretty flowers in it, and there's a stream over there. It's very possible that you read a whole page of just that. Like, if there's no action, and there's no feelings, and there's no thoughts, then chances are the main idea of that passage is what they're describing. They want to build the setting. They want to show what this crowd of people is like. Any of those things. So it's important to keep that in order. Those are the things that you need to look out for. Action words should jump out at you, then feeling words, then sentences about the thoughts. And then if it's none of that, it's probably just a really descriptive passage. And the thing is, especially with description, I feel like that's where people get the most lost in it. You don't have to understand every single word, chances are. Like, if you're reading through a passage and you know that there's no actions, feelings, or thoughts, and it's just description, you don't necessarily need to hang on every single word. Like, read all the words. I'm not telling you to skim things like the TikTok girlies or that one person or whatever. I don't even know how many people are doing that now. But what I am telling you is, if you're reading something old and you're just, stuck on what you don't understand, you're lost. Focus on what you do understand. Because chances are, out of that whole page that you read of description of the pretty meadow with the pretty flowers, if one of the lines metaphorically comparing a daisy to something went over your head, that doesn't interfere with your ability to get the general gist of the passage and why they're describing this meadow in so much detail. So I think that that's a very good specific set of procedures, or specific procedure with steps of things to look for, and just being able to think to yourself, what are the most important parts of a text? Just those 4 things. I do have some additional general tips. So not the step-by-step what to look for, but just in general, if you are reading something old, here are some things that I want you to keep in mind. First of all, you're going to get better at this stuff with practice. The more old stuff you read, the faster you will eventually get through it, and with higher levels of comprehension. Also, don't look up every single word that you don't know, because it's going to take forever and it's going to suck the joy out of everything. If there's a word that you're seeing used 2 or 3 times, okay, yeah, then look it up. But chances are, if you can get through it and understand the main idea without looking up every single new word to you that an older passage might be using, you might not need to worry about it. And I've alluded to this before, but please just focus on what you do know and not what you don't know. Because if you start freaking out about not knowing stuff, your brain is in panic mode and you're not internalizing what you're reading. And you probably are going to be able to figure out the main gist of it, even if you don't necessarily know every single word, or if the sentence structure here and there confuses you a bit. Chances are you're going to get through it. And one thing I highly recommend is test yourself by checking yourself. So I did this a lot in undergrad. When I was feeling not very confident when I was in my Shakespeare class, because I was reading, a play a week, a play every other week. So we focused on one play for 2 weeks at a time, kind of. What I would do is I would read a scene, and there were times where I'm like, all I understood from this is this guy doesn't like this guy and joked with that girl about it a lot. And then what I would do is I would check myself against SparkNotes. And I was so oftentimes very surprised, and I'd be like, oh, that was all that happened. It throws you off when they are using so many words to describe things compared to modern English. All right, so that's kind of my tips. I had a feeling, I just feel in my heart that somebody needs to hear this. It's probably going to be one of those videos that I had fun making and I had fun thinking about, and then like 5 people watch it or something like that. So it is what it is. But yeah, let me know your process when you're reading older literature, if you agree with any of the points that I make, if there's like some other way that you've learned to make sense of older literature, if there was like a teacher that gave you a good tip that helped you like when you're growing up maybe, classic books that you love. I don't really care. Comments are great. I do love reading them. I don't get them that often, but when I do, I really love to read them. I hope that everyone is having a wonderful winter if you're in the northern hemisphere, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, soaking it up in the sun. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.